Okay. On this week, in MLB This Week, we're going to be talking about pitchers and catchers starting off spring training, look at a couple of teams and what's going on with them, and also another big major change in baseball, and that's the time clock involved in baseball. All this and more on this week's edition of MLB This Week. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of MLB This Week. My name is Rich.
And I'm Gary.
We're here talking baseball with you every week on this show. And Gary, we finally got some nice views of spring. Pitchers and catchers back on the mound and behind the plate down there in Florida and out in Arizona.
And isn't that a great thing to see some sunshine on the news instead of just snow, and more snow? And I think we all here in the Northeast frankly, have had it. I'm disgusted and cannot wait for the snow to leave, and it's going to be around a while, but at least we can see pictures of where most people should be living. At least I should be living where where the weather is warmer, even though they've had some chilly temperatures down there.
Yeah, just unless you go through it on a daily basis with what Boston and certain parts of New York and certain Midwest towns have been through this winter, it's hard to appreciate spring, and it's so great to see those warm photographs coming, even on the news for a brief moment or two, and it just lets us know that spring is just around the corner for us also here in the Northeast. And Gary, a lot of big stories around baseball this week, and of course number one is the return of pitchers and catchers to spring training. And we're going to take a look at a couple of teams tonight that have some interesting situations going on already in spring training. And one of those teams is the Phillies. And right off the bat with the Phillies, who trained down in Clearwater, Florida, the report was that Cole Hamels now has had enough. He wants to leave the team after being rumored in so many trade scenarios in the offseason. He just more or less had enough, and he's let the media know that he's looking forward to going to a new team.
Yes, and it's going to be a sticky situation now, because really what he does is tie the Phillies' hands. Now a team can come in and offer less, and they're not obligated, of course, to trade him. But do you want an unhappy pitcher, or do you want to make a deal? So it's a little stupid on his part. Well, I guess not on to him. It's not stupid wanting to get out, but he's really going to hurt the Phillies in that way, I believe, by coming out and saying something.
Yeah, it just seems maybe he could have kept this under his hat a little bit, but no, on day one of spring training down there in Clearwater, Cole Hamels sort of wore his heart on his sleeve, and we've got to say that he's been a true blue Philly, if that's possible. He's tried to stick with this team, and he just wants to win, which is the goal of all major leaguers, but when they get a lot of misinformation coming from management and just a lack of moves that the Phillies made in the offseason, I guess it's made his mind up that he'd rather be elsewhere. But moving out to the West Coast there in Arizona, the Dodgers camp brought in the first day of pitchers and catchers as well, and a lot of laughing and a lot of joking going on out there in Arizona with the Dodgers, and they're having a great time out there, Gary.
Well, I guess that's the way you have to be. You got to be relaxed, and you don't want to come in tense. There are jobs to be won, but for the most part, most of the veterans know that they're going to make the team. They're pretty well set in the team. I don't know if it's true, but I heard a rumor that the Padres were all wearing name tags because they've got so many new faces there. So who knows if that's true or not? But yeah, you got to go with this. Is a good part now. This is where it starts for these guys. And in a month or so, they'll be looking to come north, and they won't be as happy and jolly.
Yeah, that's for sure. Dodger manager Don Mattingly addressed a story that we'll have coming up right next on the show, and that's the pace of play rule changes. He was asked about that in the first day of spring training, and he said, in general, I am all for us playing at a better pace. The dead time in between pitches cut out some of that, and it'll be good for the game. So Mattingly not really going 100% on the side of this new rule, but he also said he hasn't had too much time to address and review all of the details of the new rules. So I'm sure the managers will be getting plenty of training in that in the next coming days. And let's face it, it's something that baseball really hasn't had to contend with ever in the history of baseball. There's always been a kind of a lazy pace to the game. In general, batters can step out of the box when they want to, and it's going to be a good learning curve for a lot of players as well.
Well, Rich, I don't know if it's necessarily the game's fault or I'm going to maintain it's a societal issue. We have a society now of instant gratification, and we want everything done now, quick, 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 quick. And baseball's not a game like that. And unfortunately, they're going to have to make some changes to try to pick up the pace. But I don't want to see them ruin it completely. I don't want to, because that's the beauty of baseball. Baseball is a summer game. Baseball is for those long, hot summer days when you can lounge and listen to a game on the radio or watch a game on the television. And I mean, growing up, you remember walking down the street, and I grew up in Queens, New York, and people would be having radios on, and you'd walk by a house and you'd hear the game going on, and you hear Bob Murphy's voice or Mel Allen's voice if you were a Yankee fan, and you'd go to the beach and you could walk down the beach and get 15 scores of the games as you walk down the beach, and that's the beauty of baseball.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They want to. Let's not turn it into a video game with constant action. I think sometimes baseball's too cerebral. I think it's too smart for people, and we don't want to think about things anymore.
That's for sure. Well, we'll be talking a whole lot about that in the upcoming segment on MLB This Week. Moving to the Midwest, we have a report out of Chicago. Chicago Cubs manager Joe Maddon got one important thing out of the way. First morning of spring training there on Saturday, actually, naming Hector Rendon as being his closer. A lot of people had said that the Cubs might be using the bullpen by committee and closer by committee type of selection for the closer, but no, Joe Maddon got that right out and in front of everybody, Hector Rendon being the closer for the Cubs, and a lot of people are looking forward to a great year by the Chicago Cubs.
Well, it's hard to argue with Joe Maddon's track record, so I'm sure they're going to be a better team than they were last year.
Yes, they will be. Well, we want to let all our listeners know, as we've been talking about the last couple of shows, we're now listener-sponsored. So you can go right to our website at MLBThisWeek.com. You can find a link right to our page where you can actually sponsor our show. Give us a couple bucks a month if you like the show and you feel like you would like to sponsor us. We can put that towards some good use. So Patreon.com is the website. And the official link is Patreon, which is patreon.com/MLB This Week. You can find our link there and sign up right there. You can give us a monthly donation with PayPal if you'd like, or major credit card, and we'd love to have you on board as a sponsor.
Yes, sir. It sure would be great. So we can keep up this fine show that we're doing and keep up with all the technology that comes and hopefully give you a better show.
Exactly. That's our goal in all of this, and everything that we would make would, of course, go right back into the show. And that's sort of the way I do things, Gary. If I make something on my different shows and online, I plow it right back into the shows and give it right back to the people in terms of getting new equipment and things like that, and uh, being able to obtain information, which is not cheap these days, so you have to subscribe to different online things to bring the latest information to our listeners. So that's what we would love to do for you. And Gary, speaking of time and things like that, it's going to be strange to see baseball on a time clock this year, and you have that story for us with some more details on exactly what the timing is going to be all about.
Well, they're not going to use the time clock per se, but they're going to have some new rules, and it's going to address four key areas. The managers must stay in the dugout during replay challenges. Now, I don't know if they've come up with a system yet to handle that. Maybe they're going to go to the like football, where they throw out the whatever they call it, the banner or whatever, to make a challenge. And that's the first thing. The managers must stay in the dugout so they don't come out and argue while the video guys are looking it up. And number two, the hitters must keep at least 1 foot in the batter's box during at bats. So I guess they're trying to stop the human rain delays that we've had out there with guys getting out and the adjusting of the gloves and the regripping the bat and the adjusting of the cup or whatever else they want to do, fix their socks, tie their shoes, all of that. So they're trying to eliminate that to speed up the game. And the game must promptly return to play after TV commercial breaks. Amen for that one. Why don't we try knocking off one of the commercials during a commercial break? Perhaps that would speed up the game as well. The four timed pitching changes. Relief pitchers will have 2 minutes, 30 seconds to get from the bullpen to the mound, throw their warm-up pitchers, and throw their first pitch to the next batter. Now, I don't, I don't know if I'm crazy about that one. But congratulations on your degree.
Thank you very much.
And,
I'm trying to learn all of these new rules here, so excuse the.
Yes, I think you have to be a scholar to keep up on all of this stuff. But I don't know. That's going to be kind of a rush with the, bringing in a relief pitcher. They're going to have to run in from the bullpen. And they're entitled to 8 throws, warm-up throws. So that's going to be tight, but we'll see how it works. I'm sure that they've had people on it timing these things and figure that that's all the time you need. I don't think they would rush anything, but the commissioner did say that these changes represent a step forward in our efforts to streamline the pace of play. The most fundamental starting point for improving the pace of the average game involves getting into and out of breaks seamlessly. In addition, the batter's box rule will help speed up basic action of the game. And I think he's got a point there.
Yeah, he has a point. This rule sort of came out of nowhere, though. We practically got into the first day of spring training with pitchers and catchers. You open your newspaper or you go online, and all of a sudden, all right, baseball has this rule in effect. And I'm not too keen on the way it was brought into the game. Not much was said about it before spring training even started. What are the violators going to be getting if they do not get in the batter's box or they step out? Is a strike going to be called on them? Is there an out going to be called on the team? And how does this change baseball? We remember just a few years ago, Nomar Garciaparra was one of the probably one of the major reasons why this rule came up. Every pitch he would step out and adjust both of his batting gloves. Then he would step back in, and that was he was setting some sort of pace to the game. Pitchers do the same thing. Some are slower, some are faster. Uh, some umpires have a high strike zone. Some umpires have a low strike zone. Uh, I don't know. You toying around with the inner workings of the game here a little much, and they've always had a rule where a pitcher should deliver a ball in a certain amount of time, but these other rules, as far as the batter's box rule, it just seems like a little bit much to me.
Well, I think they're looking to see what they can do. I mean, that's obvious. And I think they're trying to make the most changes without affecting the largest part of the game. I have no problem with the batters keeping a foot in. I mean, some of these guys get ridiculous with these things. So keep a foot in the batter's box. Make it more aware of the game. The time pitching changes, I've already talked about that. By the way, it does go on to say that the players who violate the rules will receive a warning, then be subject to a series of fines up to $500, which is really nothing for this. But they're going to try these things in spring training, but they're not going to impose any warnings or fines until May. So spring training in the first month of the regular season will be a phase-in period. I don't have a problem with them giving warnings in the phase-in period because they have to tell these guys that they're doing wrong. So why they're not giving out warnings, I could see the fines, but you could say, hey, you violated that rule, I guess it's going to be like replay. We're going to have to see how it works out and what we think of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of gray areas in this. Along with that, there's been other timers, quote unquote, announced, length in between breaks of each half inning. Only 2 minutes and 45 seconds for nationally televised games and 2 minutes and 25 seconds for local broadcasts. So if you've been to the ballpark, I would have to estimate that breaks between innings were probably in the area of 4 minutes per inning, maybe even 5 minutes. It just seemed like a good amount of time between innings to me. But now they're cutting down to 2 minutes rather, and 25 seconds for a changeover between innings. Some other activities here. Walk-up music begins 40 seconds. Warm-up pitches end. Time left 30 seconds. Everything's timed now, and it's just it's going to be strange to see how this works out.
Well, but let's remember when we were kids too, they didn't have walk-up music. I mean, you had the organist play a little a ditty or something between the innings, and every batter didn't have a walk-up song, and so that's, I mean, I understand. To me, it goes back to the societal issue, though. You have to have something, loud music, and I mean, I've gone to games and come home with a headache because the music is blasting and it's so constant. Why do we really need that?
That's true, and that really doesn't say much about the music per se, quote unquote, but the stadiums have these new high-intensity speakers, and I agree with you. I've sat in a couple seats myself, and you can't really hear anything but what's coming out of that speaker, and usually it's quite loud. So if they wanted to get into that as far as individual stadiums and regulating decibels coming out of those speakers, then I would be all for that. But this timing, everything's timed down to the second. Baseball has never been a sport kept by a timer. That's what's made it unique for 100+ years. And sorry if I'm going on a rant on this,
No,
but
no.
I'm just like, I just can't believe that they just, why don't they put it on a time clock of 2 hours and 15 minutes and play for that length of time, and whoever wins, wins. That's what you always loved about baseball. You could be there for 2 hours in a 2 hour special, or you could be there for 6 hours in a game that never wants to end. And baseball and this new commissioner, in my opinion, messing with just the very crux of the game.
Well, I kind of agree. I don't like the idea of timing everything, and I'm sure I said this on this show before, but I'll just repeat myself if people don't mind. But it's like golf now. You go to a golf course, and everything is timed, and if you're not done at the 9 holes in 2.5 hours or whatever it is, then they want you to not play the back nine, and I don't think that's fair. I'm going out. I'm not. I don't want to go to play golf and rush through it because I'm on a time schedule. That's not what I play for. That's not the reason. What fun is it to go play golf and to play in 2.5 or 3 hours, the 18 holes even, and then I want to get out for the day. I want to spend 4 hours there.
And have a nice afternoon. Exactly.
Yes, I don't want, and it's the same thing with a ball game. I think sometimes they overlook some of the curious facts. They want to get kids involved. Okay, so then don't start a national game at 8:30 or a World Series game at 8:30. Start it at 7. Start it at 7:30. Then that's what they used to do. Now it's all about this. Oh no, we have to make the game itself faster. Well, I don't know. If they had what was it? 3 hours and 24 minutes was the 3 hours and 2 minutes in 2014, which was the record, which was the average. So if you started a game at 7:30, a World Series game, it would be over by 10:30.
Right.
Or you could keep a kid up until 10:30 unless he's a real young kid.
And I'm all for that as well. Start the games earlier, but don't put things on a timer. I pay a lot of money to go see a baseball game. I don't want to be walking out of the stadium in 2 hours. I want to enjoy myself.
Exactly. I agree there. I do agree there. And but I mean, they're gonna do it. It's we have to live with it and see what happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to be a big learning curve for a lot of people, but I'm going to have to give it one of these for 2015. The old gong for the time clock in baseball. Hey, Gary, it's 20 seconds. That time is up.
And
Sorry.
and we've got a clock tonight, so you wanted to talk a little about the Cubs, and they're gonna honor number 14 this year.
Yes, indeed. A few years ago, I was able to make it out to Wrigley Field, and I think I've said it on this show and other shows, and even my blog at fightinphillies.com. If you ever want to really enjoy yourself, I'm sure there's plenty of great stadiums around the country, but you must make a trip to Wrigley Field because it's just a magical place. They clap for just about everything, from a ground out to you name it, and people are just enjoying themselves, loving baseball. And this year the Cubs lost one of their all-time greats, Ernie Banks. He passed away last month at the age of 83. The Cubbies will be honoring him this year by wearing a commemorative number 14 patch on their jerseys. And they will also wear, during the spring training games, the number 14 patch on their hats. So it's a nice gesture to honor one of the all-time great Cubbies. And before this year, I haven't really studied or heard too much about Ernie Banks. I knew he was a long-time Cubby, but he had a 19-year career with the Cubs and 14 All-Star games. So you know the guy was really great. He was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1977. It's a great great time there by the Cubbies to honor one of their own, and always great to see that baseball honoring their own, especially with this case with Ernie Banks.
I saw Ernie play late in his career, so I didn't get to see the best years, but came up as a shortstop, moved to first base due to bad knees and a bad back. Was just 500 and plus home runs he hit in his career, and definitely was a great ambassador for the game and for the Chicago Cubs, and he'll be missed.
Yes, he will. So we want to thank everybody for listening to MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week show. Tune in on Stitcher Radio if you're on the road. You can always hear our podcast there. You can also find us on iTunes or our website. It's MLBThisWeek.com. We do the shows live over the internet on video. So if you've ever curious, you've been listening to our audio shows, which we're getting more and more listeners every week. We want to keep thanking you all for listening to the show. If you want to tune in live, you can go to our Google Plus page and just Google that, or go right on over to our website and find it out. We usually do the shows on Sunday night, anywhere from 7 to 8 o'clock. Usually as the season starts, we get a little later with the 8 o'clock starts of the shows, but we'd love to have your participation. You can send us questions, chat with us right online here as we're doing the show, and we'd love to have you stop by.
And don't forget to check out baseballpodcasts.net and baseballtalkradio.com, and there's tons and tons of great baseball talk shows there. There's my show, Mets Musings, as well as Rich's show, Phillies Talk, and there's a Yankee show, and Milwaukee Brewers, and St. Louis Cardinals, Minnesota Twins, San Francisco Giants. I'm probably missing, even a Japanese baseball, a fantasy league team, fantasy league podcast, and just tons and tons of great baseball information. So check it out, baseballtalkradio.com or baseballpodcast.net. The home great baseball talk shows.
Yes, it is, and they have a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week player there, and you can also tune into the individual shows. So if you've ever had a hard time finding baseball podcasts online, and that's why this site was created, bringing together a lot of great shows for you to listen to and tune into throughout the whole baseball season and even the whole year.
Yep.
So baseballtalkradio.com, and Gary, you have the next story of the night up here, and a very interesting story. I've been waiting to hear for this all day here. The Major League Baseball in a fight over a letter.
Well, yes, Major League Baseball is in a fight over the letter W. It is engaged in a legal battle with the financial advisor website WalletHub.com over their logo, which happens to be a W. According to MLB's claims, WalletHub's representation of the letter W may confuse fans of the Chicago Cubs and Washington Nationals who own brand-based trademarks of the same letter. Now, the Cubs, you're probably wondering, what are the Cubs doing with a W? Well, they fly that huge flag with a blue W whenever the Cubbies have a victory, and it's also apparently a source of merchandising revenue, as it appears on several different items sold around the ballpark. As for the Nationals, they have the curly W as their primary logo. It's a historic and merchandising trademark dating back to the Washington Senators' day. The trademarked W's in question are obviously well distinguished, but it is still the league's fear fans will incorrectly assume the website is connected or in some way endorsed by those franchise. And I I honestly don't see how they could be even one bit confused that one represents the other, because they're not. It's a block letter W essentially on green, and neither team has got green in their colors and not representative at all. So this is a case. It's almost reminiscent of the great podcast boycott or kickoff by iTunes last year, where MLB doesn't like something and they want to do something about it. But I think it's much ado about nothing. In fact, I'm surprised they never. Walgreens, the drugstore chain, uses the same W in their ads as the Washington Nationals. I think it's almost the same exact W.
Yeah,
And
it's amazing.
I think they've had that probably before, maybe the Senate or the Nationals. So maybe that's why Major League Baseball don't go after Walgreens. But I mean, this W in question, it's a little bit ridiculous, and we'll see where it goes. But the design, and as I said, the green background should be enough to eliminate any confusion for fans. And I don't think the people are that stupid that they're going to get confused.
Yeah, and as you said, Walgreens has it. Uh, Maybe even Walmart has a version of a fancy W, and it'll be interesting to see how this works out. And it's all basically boiling down to this, folks: the ringing of the cash register, and it's the lawyers that are actually making out on this one as well, Gary.
As they always do, Rich.
So that's an interesting story, and always been a fan of that Washington Nationals W. And as you said, I don't think too many people are going to be confusing the letter W.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think they give the fans enough credit.
No. And our next story up here, a great story that I was very happy to read in the past week or so. The Olympics coming up quite a time from now, actually, 5 years from now in Tokyo, 2020, the Tokyo Summer Olympics. There's a movement on to bring baseball and softball back into the Olympics. They've been out of the Olympics since 2008 when the games were in Beijing. But this past week or so, and past month, maybe, the International Olympic Committee had a session in Monaco and possibly is going to have these games back included for the 2020 Olympics. So we'll have to see. And even if it wasn't with Major League Baseball players, I think this would be a great thing for baseball, Gary.
Yeah, and I'd be more apt for that than bringing in the major league players, because that's going to be in the middle of the pennant race. One of the Olympics are usually in September or so, I believe. I don't know if the dates are out for that particular Olympics, but I wish all the Olympics would go back to the so-called amateurs, but do we really need dream teams in basketball and NHL All-Stars playing and stopping the season in the middle of the week, in the middle of the year? I mean, for an example, last year when they did it, the captain of the New York Islanders, John Tavares, was hurt for Team Canada, and he missed the rest of the season for the Islanders. So, not that they were going anywhere last year, but just so happens they're a better team this year, and I don't know. I just don't want my player there.
Exactly.
I'm not a big fan of the World Baseball Classic because I don't want my guys playing there getting hurt, and then you lose them for a season. And I think it's kind of selfish on the players' part. I mean, sure, the nationalism and all of that is great, and you want to play for your country, but you're getting paid millions of dollars by somebody to represent the city, and it's nice you want to go play for your country, and that's terrific. The patriotism, all of that, I get it, but it's reminiscent of this Carmelo Anthony thing in basketball, where He wanted to play in the All-Star game. The Knicks allowed him to play, and then now he shut it down because he has to have knee surgery. He could have had the knee surgery 2 months ago and be that far ahead of schedule. Um, sometimes you got to know who's paying for your board, your room and board, and accept whatever they tell you.
Yes, the Tokyo Games organizers, they can now move ahead with an official request to include these games back into the Olympics. Again, it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes. I agree with you 100%. I don't want to see Major League Baseball players go to this. They're usually about 2 weeks in length. I remember that Major League Baseball players used to go to the Olympics when they had baseball into these games, but let the younger people in college, even some minor league players take part in this, and let them experience the thrill of being in Olympics. As you said, Gary, it should be a sport where there's not professional athletes that are paid millions of dollars. These are for amateur players, the Olympics, and to my knowledge, in most every other sport, that's the way it is. Amateur Olympians taking part in games. So be interesting to see where this goes. Of course, they have 5 more years before this is going to come up, but baseball could be back in the Olympics.
Okay.
And Gary, you have our last story of the week here for us.
Well, Rich, everybody loves Bill Murray. He's the comedian Bill and the actor Bill Murray. But what a lot of people don't know is he's a big baseball fan. He has a part ownership in a number of minor league clubs, like the Charleston River Dogs, the Hudson Valley Renegades, the St. Paul Saints, among others. And in fact, it's not an odd sight to see him taking tickets before some of the games. He has shown up at stadiums of teams that he owns and taking tickets. But what people don't realize is that he has a professional hit to his credit. In 1978, the not yet ready for primetime player took his talents to the independent Gray Harbor Loggers of Aberdeen, Washington for 5 weeks. Now, this was done as an NSL special feature featuring what the performers did over the summer break. Murray took the sport plenty seriously. He came on as a pinch hitter for his first pro at bat, and he rapped a single against the Victoria Mussels, though he would later claim it was off a junior high fastball. So Bill Murray, the actor comedian, has a base hit in his credit as a professional ball player in his career playing for a independent team out west.
Yes, indeed. So that's some great trivia here, and it runs right along with the Oscars, which are going on tonight out in Los Angeles in just a few minutes here as we're doing our podcast. And Bill Murray, I'm doing a little reading on him right now. He also is a part owner of a team out in the Midwest as well, one of the minor league teams. So, yeah, Bill Murray, a big baseball fan, regularly appears at Cubs games, and just an overall big baseball fan. It's great for the sport.
And one of the side note to the Oscars, Billy Crystal, who's hosted a number of times the Oscars, actually signed a one-day contract with the New York Yankees a few years ago, about 5-6 years ago. And he was a designated hitter in a spring training game on his 60th birthday. So the Yankees let him sign that one-day contract, and he got to get in as a designated hitter in a spring training game, and he led off the game and struck out on a 3-1 pitch, missed the 3-2 pitch. I'm sorry, and but Billy Crystal had an at-bat as a Yankee on his birthday in a spring training game.
Very interesting fact there. And given the fact that it is Oscar night, this is unscheduled to be on the podcast, a little extra feature here for the listeners. We're going to give you the top 5 baseball movies ever. as rated by a website called RottenTomatoes.com. If you've ever had a chance, you're a big movie fan, you want to check that website out. All bunch of information about movies, DVDs, television, and news. And Gary, starting from number 5, The Pride of the Yankees, 1942, with Gary Cooper, ranked at number 5 all time. Number 4 on their list, The Bad News Bears, 1976. That's a classic. Number 3, The Life and Times of Hank Greenberg, 2000. That movie came out. And number 2 is Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Of course, great movie there as well about Billy Beane and how he does business out there in Oakland. And the number 1 baseball movie of all time, can you guess it?
It's got to be Field of Dreams. Or it could be Bull Durham, but I'll say Field of Dreams.
I think your second guess was right there. Bull Durham takes it. 1988, great Major League Baseball film with Kevin Costner. So there you have it, the top 5 baseball movies ever. And not sure if they won an Oscar or any one of them, but if you're a big baseball fan, I'm sure you've probably seen 1 or 2 of them.
It's a little hard to believe that Field of Dreams isn't in the top 5 and the Bad News Bears is, but a lot of good baseball movies. For the Love of the Game was very good with Kevin Costner. Of course, you mentioned Pride of the Yankees. Number of bad ones, the Babe Ruth story. They could never get the Babe Ruth story or movie about Babe Ruth. They can't get a decent one. I mean, the one with John Goodman was just terrible. The Babe Ruth story, the old ones when we were a kid with William Bendix, was awful. There was a good mini-series, I guess. It was 2 or 3 parts that they had done with Stephen Lang as the Bambino, and that was relatively decent. That was probably the best that I've seen, but there's so many of them. Cobb, which is apparently full of lies and not a very good adaptation of Ty Cobb. But just so many of them out there, and okay, that's Rotten Tomatoes.
Incidentally, Field of Dreams ended up number 8 on their all-time list, voted upon by critics. So yeah, as you say, there could be a little skewing going on with the votes, but check it out. Top 25 they have listed there if you're ever in the mood to watch a baseball movie. And Gary, time has flew by so fast on this podcast. Already looking forward towards the next one. We'll have it for our listeners, full team workouts next week, starting up in just a couple days for most of the teams. And I'm sure we'll have a ton more stories for the next MLB podcast this week.
I'm sure we will, Rich, and I'm looking forward to it as well.
All right, well then we'll talk to you all next show on MLB This Week. Take care. Enjoy the scenes out of spring training. Send us an email if you like. Stop over to our website, MLBThisWeek.com. Love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and talk to you next week.